he has ordered a military operation in eastern Ukraine. He said there's no goal to occupy Russia's neighbor, but he warned if other countries attempt to interfere, there will be consequences they have never seen.
Russia is dropping bombs on Ukraine. The West continues to talk. Where does it go from here? Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist with the Toronto Sun, joined by my friends and colleagues, Laurie Goldstein in Toronto, Lauren Gunter in Edmonton. And gents, I don't know about you. I'm not shocked that Vladimir Putin decided to invade Ukraine. A little surprised by the breadth of the bombings and everything else going on. It's far bigger than I expected, and it could go towards nuclear weapons. Where do you see this going? First, are you shocked by what has happened so far? And where do you see it going? Laurie, we'll start with you.
Not shocked it happened. I'm shocked it happened so quickly. I don't think we're facing nuclear war at this point. That's Putin's bravado. That's for domestic for domestic consumption. But look, this can go south really quickly. They have now invaded Ukraine. So now the hope is, will he stop at the two eastern provinces that are basically, there's a lot of Russian support, like he did with Crimea in 2014. But there are all kinds of things that could happen.
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has tweeted this information. Russian occupation forces are trying to seize the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. He says our defenders are giving their lives so that the tragedy of 1986 will not be repeated. He says, I have reported this to the Swedish Prime Minister. This is a declaration of war against the whole of Europe.
Poland is right on the border of Ukraine. What if by mistake, Russia shoots down a Polish airliner, or there are refugees now streaming into Poland? What if there's an attack there? What if Poland responds? Ukraine isn't a member of NATO, but Poland is. And the NATO charter says if one nation's attacked, all nations are attacked. So all bets would be off. No, this is a dangerous time. I don't know what's going to happen. Sanctions take time. That's the problem with sanctions. And we're dealing with a dictator who controls his own people. So he can make them suffer and they don't revolt. So these are dangerous times.
Lauren, where do you expect this to go over the next little while in terms of military operations? Obviously, with all of those NATO countries bordering Ukraine and parts of Russia, this is a tense moment.
Yeah, it is. And it's tense because nobody knows what either side is going to do. That's what leads to escalation in war, is when neither side knows what other is going to do. In fact, I'm not even sure that Putin knows what he's going to do yet. He's playing this out. He's seeing how this rolls. How many tanks have we seen cross into Ukraine yet? It's one thing to do a sort of shock and awe bombardment from the air and by missiles. It's another to have, 4 or 5 Russian divisions roll into Ukraine and right up to the steppes in Kiev. So we have to watch what's going to happen, but I don't expect much from the West, period. If I was Ukraine, I would feel totally abandoned at this point.
But there is debate in the West about whether we should do anything or how much. I'd like a quick response from both of you to this claim that, well, Ukraine's not a real democracy. We don't owe them anything. Don't you understand that Russia has security concerns? I look at that and I say, Russia has security concerns and NATO on its doorstep because it invades Georgia, it invades Transnistria, has now invaded Ukraine, first Crimea, and 7 years of bombing in the eastern provinces. There's a reason that all these countries want to be part of NATO. Russia is the threat. Where do you guys fall within those lines of argument?
For me, if we don't stop him here, he will just keep going. Look, the bigger issue here is that the United States used to be the world superpower. Now its might is matched, I think, not individually, but collectively by Russia and China. China is already saying it will help Russia survive the sanctions by having, give us more, we'll buy more of your wheat and oil. So yeah, you can say, well, it's way over there and it doesn't mean anything. But Putin will act as the world acts. If the world does nothing and he sees he can get Ukraine, he won't stop at Ukraine.
Lauren?
I'm pretty much with it. I don't know where his expansionist ambitions would go after Ukraine. And I don't think they would manifest themselves quickly. He invaded Crimea, took over Crimea in 2014, and now is only just going after some or all of the rest of Ukraine. So it's a long game, and he does this, as Laurie said earlier, partly for domestic consumption because his economy right now is kind of sluggish. And so he needs something to take people's minds off of their internal problems, and he decides that he's going to invade Ukraine. So his expansionism would wait for several more years, but who knows whether he decides he wants part of Poland back, or he wants Estonia, Lithuania,
the Russian,
Latvia,
and it'll start with just the Russian-speaking parts of those regions,
right?
Before moving into taking over the rest of them.
Exactly. So to the extent that Russia has security concerns, they are all of their own making. If he would stay within his borders, no one would bother him. Ukraine could become the leader of NATO. We could have a Ukrainian who would be the Secretary General of NATO, and there would be no threat to Russia's security until Russia decided to move. He sees his security threatened in the sense that when he decides to expand, if somebody's part of NATO, then he has a bigger problem expanding into that area. But there is no security concern if Russia keeps its nose out of other people's countries. And so, I think what we should have done, and it is too late to do this now, but what we should have done is we should have moved a division of NATO forces into Ukraine for training purpose, whatever it is, so that they were there. There were Germans there, there were Americans there, there were Canadians there. Putin would have been far less likely to have started a hot war if it meant that there were going to be bodies of Americans and Canadians and Brits as a result. But it's too late for that now, and I don't see the resolve among the West.
The United States and our allies and partners will continue to respond to Russia's actions with unity, with clarity, and with conviction.
Is there even a resolve, Lauren, to do effective sanctions, whether it be from Canada and Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden in the States or Boris Johnson? Are we doing even that effectively?
I mean, I was pleased to see the Germans the other day cancel the new Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline that was being built from Russia to Germany. That's a big sacrifice on the Germans' part. For all of their talk about green alternative energy, they still relied heavily on natural gas. And so that's their biggest single source. And so they've said, look, we're not going to deal with you because we don't like the way you're doing things. I think that's terrific, but I don't see much else.
I was shocked when both NATO and Biden said, as this was developing, that they definitely would not put soldiers on the ground in Ukraine. You never tell your enemy what you're going to do or not. Maybe you're not going to do it, but and I agree with Lauren. The problem began. Economic sanctions take time. As for Trudeau, what's he going to do? Is he going to send the truckers convoy over? I mean, he seems to think they're capable of destabilizing governments, at least for 2 days. So maybe they can go over and do the fights for us.
The Ukrainians might accept any and all help at this point because they are in a desperate situation, and they have been failed by the Western countries that they wanted to turn towards. That's why Russia didn't want Ukraine staying independent. They wanted to turn more to the West and away from Moscow. Putin couldn't handle that. He's decided he's invading, and now the whole world has a mess on its hands. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you share this on social media, say a prayer for Ukraine, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.